Hello, there are few built-in functions and operators in Python that didn't fit well into any other category. So I thought, why not create a separate video and let's discuss all of them together. So suppose you're willing to create a list in Python. What you will do, you will write my list and assign it some list. So suppose you want to create a list with 1, 2, 3, 4, and if you press shift and enter, the list has been created. Now if you're willing to go through each element of this list, what you will do, you will create a for loop and you will say for num in my list print num. Press shift and enter and you will see that the list will get printed out to the screen in the form of a separate element. Now this is a common task in Python, so Python thought, why not create a separate function for it instead of creating a long list and assigning it to some variable and keeping it in the memory. Instead we have a generator function by the name of range, which allows us to create a list. So what it takes is 3 parameters. If I press shift and enter, you will see that the first parameter it takes is the starting point, the second is stop, and the third is the step, which is an optional parameter. Now you can leave the start and step size and just provide it the stop. What it will do, the range function will take its starting point as 0 and it will go till 9, and it will create numbers from 0 to 9, and with the help of this for loop we'll print them out to the screen. So if I press shift and enter, you will see that all of the numbers ranging from 0 to 9 has been printed out to the screen. Now do note that this range is a generator. If I just copy and paste it right over here, you will see that it won't print out the entire list. That is because it's a generator and it generates things on the runtime instead of keeping them inside the list. So it's a more efficient way to do stuff. We'll discuss the generators and decorators later in our course, but just to give you a little bit of introduction, that range function is a generator and it generates the list or list of numbers at runtime. Now if you're willing to print these numbers out to the console, or if you're willing to cast it out in the form of a string, you can just write list, and inside the list you can just type in the range function. And now if you press shift and enter, you will get the output in the form of a list. Now you can just save it in a variable or do whatever you want to do with it. So this was the range function. Now let's also discuss how its starting point and ending point works. Suppose you want to start the list with 2. So you will just provide 2 in the start and press shift and enter, and you will see that your list will get started from 2 and it will go till 9. It doesn't include this 10 in the list because we already discussed this in our slicing video, but whatever number you provide as the ending point in Python to range function or to slicing, it will just ignore that specific number and go till the -1 of that number. So if you're willing to start from 2 or 3 or 4, you will provide that number right over here. And if you're willing to provide a step size, you will provide it in the third parameter. So suppose you want to just print the even number. So what you will do, you will just provide the 2 as the third parameter and just press shift and enter, and you will see that you will just see the even numbers. So once more about this range function, it is a generator function. So to actually get a list out of it, we need to cast it to a list with list function. What is a generator? It is a special type of function that will generate information and not need to save it to the memory. We haven't talked about the functions of or generators yet, so just keep this in your notes for now, and we'll discuss this in much detail in our later videos. Now this was range function. Let's also discuss enumerate. Enumerate is a very useful function to use with for loops. So let's imagine a condition where we have a string A, B, C, D, E, and we want to loop through it. So I will write for each letter in A, B, C, D, and I will add a colon, press enter. Now we want to print each letter separately. So I'll write print, and inside the print function, I will just write letter. Now with this letter, I want to print few more things. So the first thing I want to print is some text with it. So that would be the letter is, and we can use the f string literals. So that would be add f at the start. So if I press shift and enter, you will see that the letter is A, B, C, D, and E. So now that's okay, but I want to print the index with this letter as well, because at each iteration, I want to know at which index I am and at which index this character is situated. So for that purpose, the first way could be I can create a variable by the name of index count and make it equal to 0. And then right over here, I can say at index curly braces, this index count. And now if I press shift and enter, you will see that it will just print out 0, 0, 0, because we have to increment it somewhere inside the loop. So that would be index count plus equals 1. So now if I press shift and enter, you will see that the A is situated at 0, the B is situated at 1, and C at 2, and so on and so forth. Now this is a little bit of a lengthy process. So instead of doing this lengthy process, we can use the enumerate function. And what this enumerate function would do, it will return each letter with its index. So the way we can do that is pretty simple. We can remove this index count from right over here, and we can remove the index count from right over here as well. And now I can just wrap this string inside the enumerate function. And what this enumerate function will return, let's just comment this statement out, and let's just print the letter out and find out what we get in return. So that would be print letter. Press shift and enter. Now you can see that we get each letter with its index. And from the tuple unpacking in the for loop video, we can just unpack this tuple and we can just uncomment this statement, and instead of this index count, I can provide I, and instead of this, and at the place of letter, it's the same. So if I press shift and enter, you will see that we will get the same result. We get the index and we get the string letter as well. So this is more compact way of doing things, or more efficient way of doing things using enumerate function. You can use the previous method as well, which was just a manual way of creating indexes and stuff like that, but I like this way more, this enumerate. Now this was enumerate function. So now let's look at zip function. So zip function is a little bit opposite to the enumerate function. Suppose we have two lists, one by the name of mylist1, and the value in it is 1, 2, 3. And we have another list by the name of mylist2. I really do apologize for this rubbish list names. I'm not able to come up with some useful name. That's why I'm just coming up with these dumb names. So we have second list by the name of A, B, and C. Do note that the length of both of the lists are same. So if I press shift and enter, we'll get an error, and it's because we have to make these letters as strings. We cannot directly store them inside list. So as soon as I correct them and press shift and enter, you will see that these both lists have been created. Now suppose you need to merge them together. Suppose you want to zip this one with this A, this 2 with this B, and this 3 with this C in the form of tuples. So you can use the zip function, and the way you will use the zip function would be to write zip and then provide mylist1 and then mylist2. And if you press shift and enter, you will see that you will get a zipped object, and it's because the zip object is in the form of list. So you either need to iterate through the zip object in the form of a for loop, or the other way would be to cast it in the list. So let's do both of them. So the first one would be tup for tup in the zip print tup. And if I press shift and enter, you will see that all of the values will be zipped together as discussed. So now if you're willing to cast it in the form of a list, you will write list and you will provide the zip. And you can see that this 1 is zipped with this A, this 2 is zipped with this B, and this 3 is zipped with this C. Now you will say, what if I have 3 lists? Well, it would be the same thing. you can just create a third list by the name of list 3, and you can provide it 100, 200, and 300. And if you press shift and enter, and then to this zip, you provide the third list as well. And if you press shift and enter, you will see that all of the 3 lists will be get zipped in the form of one giant list. Now, another common question would be, what if you have some lists that are not same in size? So suppose in one list you have 3 elements, in the other one 3, and then in the other one you have 5. So what will happen? If I press shift and enter and then come over right over here, you will see that it will ignore, the result would be the same because it will ignore these extra values. It will go up to the place where it will find the shortest list, and it will go up to that point. And after that, it will, instead of throwing some errors or doing something else, it will just ignore those values. And I think it's the efficient way or clever way to do things. Now let's also look at the in keyword. We have seen this in the for loop, but let's formally look at it, what it does. So suppose you want to check some character or some number in a list or some letter in a string. So there you can use this in keyword. Suppose we have a list having X, Y, and Z. And you want to find out if, like this is a small list, you just directly see what we have right over here in this list. But sometimes you will have a big list and you will find out something in it. Like suppose you want to find X in this list, so you will write X in and you will provide this actual list. So once you press shift and enter, you will see that it will return true, and it's because we indeed have this X inside this list. Now if you want to check 2 inside this list, you will see that it will return false because we don't have any 2 right over here in this list. Now suppose you want to find out some character in a string. So suppose you have string hello world, and you want to find if you have W inside the string. So what you will do, you will provide W and you will write W in, and you will provide the string that you want to check. And I will remove this one W because it's useless. If I press shift and enter, you will see that it will say that yes, indeed you are true, we have this W inside this list. If I provide 1 or something like that, you will see that it will provide false to us. So this is basically in keyword. If you're willing to find out something in a string or in a list, you can use in keyword there. So you will see that, okay, we have seen the in keyword with this list as well as with this string, but what about the dictionary? Because in dictionary we have 2 things. The first one is the actual key, which would be either key 1, key 2, or something like that. And the second one is the value, suppose 200 or something like that. So if you are willing to find out if you have a key in this dictionary, so you will just directly provide the key. Suppose I want to check if the key 1 is inside this dictionary. So I'll directly write key 1 in, and I will provide the actual dictionary. If I press shift and enter, you will see that it returns true. Now if you are willing to find out if we have this specific value in this dictionary or not, for that purpose you have to store this dictionary in some variable, like this D is equal to this dictionary, and then write D dot values, and then press shift and enter, and you will see that we will have error because we need to make it a function or add a parenthesis in front of it. And now you can see that we don't have this key 1 because we just have one value in this dictionary, and that's 200. And if I say 200 in the dictionary, you can see that we get true right over here. So far we have discussed the range function, then we discussed the enumerate, then we discussed the zip, and then the in keyword with lists, strings, and dictionaries. You can also use it with tuples and other stuff, but I'm not going to go with those data structures right now. We will discuss them later in our course, because there will be places where they will come and we will practically do that. Anyway, let's move on towards min and max function. So suppose you want to find out the minimum value in a list. Suppose we have this list somewhere. So suppose we have this list and I store it in my list is equal to this. Press shift and enter. So suppose I have this list. Let's print it out to the screen. I have this list ranging. Let's remove the step size so that we have a little bit more numbers to work with. Let's also remove this start so that we have a little bit more numbers to work with. Now if I'm willing to find out the minimum value in this list, I can just write min and provide this my list. So what this min function will return would be the minimum value inside this list. If I provide 2 right over here, you will see that the minimum value in this list would be 2. And now if I run the min value, you can see that we have 2. So now you can see that we have the minimum value as 2. So now what if you are willing to find the maximum value in a list? You can do the same thing but just with a change function, and that would be max. And if you press shift and enter, you will see that it will return the maximum value inside this list. So this was min and max functions. Now let's also look at the random library. So this would be the first time that we'll ever import a library in this course. So let's do it. If you're willing to import a library, you just write import and then the library name that you want to import. Suppose I want to import the random, so I'll write import random. Now from this random, I just want to import the shuffle. So instead of random, I will write shuffle, and at the start, I will write from random import shuffle. I will press shift and enter, and if you don't see an error on the import of a library, that means you have imported the library properly. Now if you're willing to use the shuffle function, you can just use it by writing shuffle and provide any list to it. Suppose I want to provide it my list. Let's remove this. Let's remove this 2 from the range so that we can start from 0. And now if I run this my list, now if I run this shuffle function and then print the list out, you will see that our list has been shuffled. Like the 1 has been brought right over here, the 0 is here, and so everything is a mess because we told it to be a mess. Anyway, this is a shuffle function. If you're willing to shuffle things inside a dictionary or inside a list, you can use this shuffle function. Now, what if you are willing to create a random number in a range? So in a range, suppose you have a situation where you need a random number each time a loop runs from 1 to 100 or something like that. So there you can use the rand init, but for rand init we have to import it from the random library. So that would be from random import rand init. And I have used this in some of my videos where I think so it was creating the timer, or it was creating the Python bot, creating the Instagram bot or something, some video, I don't remember right now, but if I find out, I will link it down in the description. Anyway, if you're willing to create a random number in a specific range, you can use rand init. And the way you can import it from the random library is from random import rand init. And now you can use it, rand init, and if I press shift and enter, you will see that it received 2 parameters. The first one is the starting point and the second one is the ending point. So suppose I want to give it 0 as a starting point and 100 as the ending point. If I press shift and enter, you will see that it will create a random number in the range of 0 to 100. And each time it would be different. If I run it again, you will see that I will get another number. If I run it again, I will get another number. Now in the last, let's discuss how can we get an input from the user. So that's pretty simple. You can just write input, and inside this input, you can just print some message to the user what they can enter right over here. So suppose enter some string. If I press shift and enter, you can see that we get an input box asking us to enter something. I can write great job, press shift and enter, and you will see that input will get printed out to the screen. So instead you can just store it in some variable like user input, press shift and enter, and now whatever you enter in this input box will get stored in the user input. And that would be, suppose I just enter some gibberish, press enter, press this input, you can see that we do have this string right over here stored in this variable. So this is pretty much it for this video. One more thing is that if you provide integer or anything to this enter function, suppose you want to print integer and press shift and enter, and in right over here if I provide 10, press enter, you will see that it will return this print casted as an integer. And it's because whatever you enter inside this input, or whatever you enter through this input function, will get casted as, or will get changed to integer will get changed to string from whatever its original type was. So this is pretty much it for this video. I hope you did learn something new today. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it this other thumbs up, which is thumbs down, literally. But anyway, till next time, enjoy hacking or programming, whatever you are doing. Stay cheeky breaky and peace out.